What's going on, guys? Code Talks here. We're back with another video, uploading after a long time, and now that everyone's in North America more out of school, we're gonna get back into it. And now I'm not gonna try to take a break. We're gonna try to keep this going. So let's get into it. Today's topics are the much-awaited loops and repetition. So loops in Python, basically just a breakdown of what we're doing. Is basically to iterate and repeat segments of code. And just so we don't have to copy and paste those code segments over and over again. So what we're covering today are for loops, for each loops, while loops, and we're going to do a few problems at the end. So a for loop is basically used for iterating and counting. So here's basically the basic syntax. So you have for Python keyword, and that means you're starting a for loop I, which is like the variable that's counting. And that's going to go from, for example, 1 to 10. And in range, we specify the start and the finish and the increment. And we'll go through that right now. And notice that the finish is not included. It only goes up to the finish. So let's say a loop is incrementing down. So we can do for I in range. And let's just start at 10. And sorry, I think the recording paused. But let's just start at 10. And let's go all the way back down to 0 and increment at -2 each time. And let's just print I just so we can see what's going on. So let's just do that. And it's just loading. And you can see it goes from, so I'll just write printing. Okay, so printing while incrementing down. So you can see that we start at 10 and we go up to 0, but not including 0 in increments of -2. And you can see I, the first time is 10, so it starts at 10, then it subtracts 2, goes to 8, and so on and so forth. So now you get how I is the counting variable. So now let's kind of copy the same thing and let's just do incrementing up. And this time let's go from 0 to 10. So we'll do a lot of the same things. And let's show the output. And while incrementing up, it makes sense. Now, what happens if I put in -2 here? So you'll see it keeps looping, and it doesn't go anywhere because it never reaches the end. It's always less than I. So essentially, it's a, it's an error in the sense that it's a logic error, and you're trying to increment, like you're starting at 0 going to 10, and you're trying to go downwards even though your end is upper bound in a sense. So just be careful of that when you're coding. So let us continue. Yeah. So just to confirm, I just checked something. This won't run. I think I said it's an infinite loop, but just so I don't have to re-edit it, it just won't run because it just doesn't make sense. You're going downwards when your upper bound is upwards. So now let's work through iterating through a list. Now we covered lists in a previous video. So let's see if I can just pull up the North Masters website. Okay, so yeah, so when you go to the North Masters website, link is in the description, and you go to the Python course, and you go to lists, you have everything there. You have the video tutorial, that'll pop up, all the notes and everything, and then you could run the code at the bottom too. So check out our website, it's super cool. We worked on it. So let's just go back into loops. So iterating through a list, just create a list, let's just call it my, can't type today. My list is equal to 1, 2. Okay, sorry, I'm back. I just was hearing background noise. But yeah, let's just create a list that's 1, 2, 1 and 10, 22, 23, 56. And now let's go through each element in the list. So if you remember before, when we're calling element 1, so for example, element let's just say the element in the first position, and we basically reference that as my list index 0. So when we run that, it makes sense. So let's do a for loop that iterates through the list. So I in range. So now this is a little bit of a shorthand. So you don't have to specify start, finish, and increment. If you just specify one thing, the automatic, so let's write the note. So you don't have to pass in all of start, finish, and increment. And in the event you pass in only one, Python reads it as start at 0, go up to the specified n, while incrementing by 1. So if I just type in a number, so we'll just do len of my list just to make it very dynamic, in the sense that I wanted to iterate up to but not equal to. I wanted to iterate up to but not equal to the length of my list. So the length of my list is 5. I wanted to go from 0, first start at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, as there's no element 5, as we learned in the list video. So let's just print out my list. So let's just say, let's just create an f string. So element at index, and then we'll just say I is or has the value my list index I. And we print that out, and we can see 1, 10, 22, 23, 56. So we don't need this. Let's just we can just comment this out. But yeah, iterating through a list. And iterating through a string is really the same thing. So if I just do a my string equals subscribe, really begging for subscribers out here. So if we do a similar thing, so you can iterate through a string the same way you can iterate through a list. So in my list video, let's see if I talked about that. So yeah, in your string, you can do the same thing. You can calling specific indices with just the same way you do it in list. So instead of, I'll just say letter at index has the value this, and change this to my string, and run the code, and this is also has to be my string, and then print through my string. Let's just copy that. Okay. So then you can see basically iterating through everything. So we can do the same thing here. So let's just copy this section of the code again. So basically, what you can do in Python is instead of making I a number, you can also make it I an element in a list. So I didn't copy the list itself. But what you can do is basically say for I in, and just delete all of this. And instead of I making a number, instead of counting it, you can say, now I showed, I think, the index of functions and everything in this video. If I didn't, you check those out. That might be Java index of, but yeah, you can check that out, how to find what index element is at. That's not too difficult. But what we're here for is showing that if I do something like this, I'll just do it and then explain what's going on after. So this might, let me just make it very very English-like, so it's simple to understand. So look, what I did here was I just did a for each loop. So basically I is each element. So it's saying for each element, do the following. So instead of iterating up to the length of the list or the length of the string, I'm iterating until there's no more elements left, if that makes sense. So this is super helpful for file I/O, and we do that in the future. And for each loops are just basically saying for each element in the object that I'm iterating through. That's literally the simplest way to put it. And I'm basically iterating over each index rather than like iterating through elements instead of numbers of indices, if that makes sense. So now onto while loops. While loops basically operate based on a condition. So a sample while loop could be while. Okay, so if I have a user input, so let's say I have a string s and make it input, enter a number. So let's just make a sample kind of program here. So enter a number, and then while that's not a number, so while s does not equal, let's say 3, we'll keep saying print wrong guess, try again, and then we do that again. Okay, so what's going on here is we're basically getting that into input, and we're gonna basically check if s does not equal 3, we're gonna print out it's a wrong number and ask them again. And this loop will iterate again and again based on this condition. Okay, so let's run this code. So let's say I enter number 4. Wrong guess, try again. If I enter 3, yeah, you got it, my number was 3. So now you can also mimic a for loop. I think that's how you spell mimic. But you can say, for example, I equals 0 while I is less than 10. So that means I'm going up to 10. Print I. And then if I want to increment by 2, let's just make it very clear. I can just do I plus equals increment. So let's just do 3. And then you can see it goes up to there. But this time I can... In for loops, I kind of would have to logic it out and add the increment to the end value. Here, I can just do up to n equals 2. And the same thing will happen, except 10 will be included. So notice, while loops can go infinitely. So if the condition is always true, the while loop will go infinitely, unlike the for loop. And those are really useful for like error handling, and I'll probably make videos on that in the future, but no, you can use infinite while loops to your advantage. So now, to end off the video, let's just quickly do these problems. So print out this pattern. So we'll get a user input n, so n equals input, so int input. So please enter a number n. And basically, what we want to do is we want to loop. So if n is the number of 5 lines So if n is the number of lines basically, and for each line we want to start at 1 and go up to n basically, so it's half, like it's a triangle. So we're going to need 2 for loops. So one for rows. So I'll explain what I'm doing. For I in range, sorry, we're back again. I keep having technical difficulties. But for I in range n, so that's the number of rows. So this outer for loop is going to go through each row. So I can just print I here. And basically, I might want to do I plus 1 since it'll start at 0. So let's just do that. So it'll please enter number n, let's say 3. So it goes 1, 2, 3. So those are the rows. So I'm going to need basically another for loop. Okay, so let's explain what I'm doing. So for j in range I, so I'm going to be printing. So basically for row 1, I is equal to 0. So I want basically to print every number up to and including 1. So that's why I did I plus 1. So you'll notice when I create n, it does this. So what's going on here? We have this outer for loop doing each row. So that's the first row, second row, third row. So notice here, I is equal to 0, 1, then 2. So then I have an inner for loop that's saying for j in range of I plus 1. So I want to basically loop through every number from whatever 0 is, 0 to I plus 1, but not including I plus 1. So here I is equal to 0. So I want to loop through, I basically want to list out all the numbers from 0 to I plus 1. So I plus 1 is 0. I plus 1 is 1. And then I go from 0 to 1. So there's only one number before 1, and 0. And I print out j plus 1. So here I is 1. Here I is 1. So I do I plus 1, 2. So then I have 0, 1, and I end there because I don't want to go up to 2. And I just increment each by 1. So then it becomes 1 and 2. So that's how we solve that problem. And now here's how we print the factorial of a number without using the math library. So let's just say input my in equals int input what you want to factorial. So now we just do result equals 1 because we want to, anything multiplied by 1 is itself. So if we do for I in range my in plus 1, and basically that means we want to go through every single number. So if I enter 10, I want to include 10 as well into my multiplication. I just do result times equals I plus 1 and print result. So if I do this, what do I want to say the factorial of? Let's say 3. That's not right. First of all, it should be like this. Second of all, the issue is because I added plus 1 twice. That's the issue. So if I do 3, it's 6. So basically, I'm going from, let's say I entered 3. The I values of i's are 0, 1, and 2. And I'm multiplying all of those, but just added on 1. So it becomes 1, 2, and 3. And I'm multiplying all of those with 1. And that's itself. So it's 1 times 1 times 2 times 3, which is 6. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or any other video ideas. Thank you very much.